gentlemen, welcome to America's Auto Enthusiast Program. This is Auto World. And now, here's your host, Bob Long.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here for another hour of Auto World. And what an hour. We're going to be talking about lubrication with a certified lubrication specialist. He's no stranger to the show, no stranger to this hour. But definitely we're going to be watching the emails and, of course, for your telephone calls at 855-660-4261. Dan Watson is a veteran with more than 25 years of vehicle lubrication experience. He's one of the largest AMSOIL distributors in all of the United States and Canada, and he's a former U.S. Navy officer where he worked in nuclear submarine technology. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the man himself, Dan Watson. Dan, thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you again, Bob. I enjoy these hours once a week, and I hope that our listeners, as they hear it off and on, will jot down a question and decide to call in and ask something that puzzles them, because there's no question that is a bad question. Usually, if you think of a question, there's another 100 people that have that same question, and you'll be the only one that calls in to ask it, but you'll satisfy an awful lot of curiosity from other people. So encourage people to call and ask those questions. This is basically a public service hour, because we're offering free information on lubrication and answering questions that people are concerned with, whether they have old classic cars they want to know about. I just saw the most beautiful Corvette here just yesterday. A friend of mine was up, and just this gorgeous Corvette, and it's about 15 years old. And then not too long ago, there was a BMW that's about 25 years old. It looked like it drove it off the showroom. So people have vehicles that they really care for.
Yes.
And my advice is that you can't know too much about the lubrication, the fuel, the filtration, the different things that you can do in your service maintenance of these vehicles. You need to be on top of it, because those things will provide either extended life or shortened life of these treasured and cherished vehicles that people have acquired over the years. So, hey, give us a call. We'd be glad to talk. And I know, Bob, that you like to talk about all these different types of vehicles and exotic cars and so forth. So, hey, folks, it doesn't really cost you anything. It's free, and I guarantee you we won't give you bum dope. We'll steer you in the right direction.
Absolutely. And speaking of unusual vehicles, rare vehicles, what about European vehicles? Are there special blends made for the European market? And, of course, when it comes to synthetics, is AMSOIL very much a part of the lubrication business in other parts of the world?
Well, those are good questions, Bob. Let's start out with the reason that we have a line of oils called European Auto Oils. And why would that be necessary? Well, in Europe, they have an organization like the API that we have here, the American Petroleum Institute, and it is the ACEA. And it's actually a French term for those, and there's no reason to go into it in detail, because it's really the Automobile Constructioners European Association, okay, ACEA. But they'll put those out in a better French tone than what I will. So anyway. But there are 5 levels of oil certification in Europe. There's one in the United States. The API SN rating right now is supposed to be backward compatible and cover all the necessary specifications for gasoline-powered automobiles. But the Europeans have a variety of different specifications for performance levels of oils they want for different cars. And you're going to have some very high standards when you buy oil for a BMW or for a Mercedes. And that oil might be a little different standard than when you buy a Volkswagen Bug or when you buy a Renault or a Volvo or a different other Peugeot or whatever you're going to buy. Obviously, if you buy a Ferrari, you're going to expect to buy some really high-quality oil. But how do you know what to do except that when you buy these really beautiful European cars, half the time people just let the dealer service them. But you may be the second owner. If you're the second owner, you're not going to the dealership. So now you've got this beautiful BMW or Mercedes, and you have to figure out, well, what's the right oil for this? And in most cases, it is not the standard North American API SN-rated engine oil. There are some strict requirements that the Europeans have, and we don't have the same requirements to meet the API SN grade. So you then have to go, well, how will I know I get the right stuff? Well, number one, in your owner's manual of a European auto, it will probably give you a certain Mercedes-Benz spec, a BMW spec, a Peugeot spec, a Porsche spec. They'll have a spec in there. And what you want to do is find out if there's people that say that their oil meets that. And that's what AMSOIL does, is they put out 4 different European auto oils, 3 of them in the 2 in the 5W40 range. One is a 0W40 and another one is a 5W30. And these oils all have different European specs, like A1B1, A1B5, A3B5, and believe me, I'm not asking the people to understand what all that means. But what I am saying is that specification is different than API SN grade oil. So when you own a European auto, you want to take a little time and make sure that you get the oil required for your car. And sometimes that's as easy as going and picking up the quart and wherever it's being sold, looking at its list of specifications, and, oh, there's my BMW 728, or wait a minute, there's my Mercedes-Benz 251.1, okay, those kind of specs. And AMSOIL lists them on the bottle, so it's pretty straightforward to find those, but you really need to use the correct oil in your European automobile. You can't just go to the Quick Lube and choose to put in whatever bulk oil they have in the tank that is SN rated. It's probably not going to meet the requirements for your European auto. And Bob, the important thing to remember is there's some highfalutin exhaust systems on some of these European cars, and they are very, very, how do I want to put it, sensitive to certain carryover that can come through from oil vapor on the engine and destroy these pollution control systems on these cars. And if they do, boy, are they expensive to fix. I just know of one case of one individual that spent close to $14,000 to replace the complete exhaust system and all this pollution control equipment on a Mercedes-Benz. So you cannot fool around with this stuff. You have to make sure you get the right spec. And I'll give you another example before we head to the break, because I know we're right at it. Turbocharged BMWs. If you use standard SN-rated oil on turbocharged BMW, it's insufficient to protect the turbo. So how long is that going to last? Okay?
Absolutely.
And a turbo is an expensive thing to replace on a BMW.
That's a fact.
It's not like getting a new spare tire, I promise you.
We'll put it in neutral and take a pit stop. Don't forget, we'd love to hear from you. 855-660-4253. I'm Bob Long, along with Dan Watson, and we're talking oils.
Giving your radio a broadcasted tune-up. This is Auto World, and your host, Bob Long.
We're back, and we are live. And our telephone number is available for you anywhere in continental U.S. and Canada, 855-660-4261. If you're listening in other parts of the world, head over to autoworldradio.com, and we have an international caller line as well. Dan Watson is with us, certified lubrication specialist with over 25 years of experience, and we've been talking about special oils for European vehicles. And Dan, that was a really good point that you made a little bit earlier, because I sometimes look at some cars that when they were new, cost an awful lot of money, but now after 10 or 15 years of depreciation, they've come down to much more affordable prices. But if you're going to buy a Jag or a Mercedes or a Bentley or whatever you choose, you might get a terrific value. You might get a former $200,000 car for $15,000, but you got to be prepared for those repairs, because that's an awful lot of money to fix an exhaust on a Mercedes.
Yes, it is. And here's the thing. You never have to guess. You can always determine what you need. There's two ways. Either you're going to find it directly in your owner's manual, see what it is directly that it tells you to look for, or, I'm telling you, folks, you can just go to thelubepage.com and jot in there in the Ask Dan, there's a thing that says Ask Dan, and you stick in there, Dan, I have a 1966 Bentley that I bought, and just what you're saying, and I really don't know what the correct oils and lubricants are. You send me those kind of questions. Sometimes they're challenging, but I'll go find the answer if I don't have it directly. But I will never guess. I will not guess for you what your lubrication is, because I think it's too important. So when you send that kind of questions and different ones, I get more questions on things like, I have a 1957 Corvette with a 427 big block Chevy in it. What oil should I use? Those kind of questions, okay? Or I have just imagine this, I have a 1965 Mustang that is exactly like the one Steve McQueen drove in Bullitt, and I want this thing to last forever. What should I lubricate it with? Okay. I love those questions, because I like the fact that people really cherish this thing that they've got, and they want to do the very best they can to protect it and keep it going, and I appreciate that. And so I want to make sure those people get responded to and that they get recommendations made. And folks, honestly, I'm hoping that we'll find some way that I can service your business and you can become one of my customers. But even short of that, some of you have some really, really beautiful cars, and I want to make sure you get the right stuff to keep that thing going, because I appreciate those classic and cars. And then I get other people that will send in a thing, and they just say, hey, I bought a 2018 Toyota, and it's telling me I need to use 0W16 engine oil. Is that possible? Right?
Yeah.
That question, I have to go back and say, yes, that's possible. But when you do it, it needs to be the best premium synthetic that you can use, because anything short of that is going to be short of protecting the car. You can't make that thin of oil with standard conventional or blended so-called synthetic blends. It just won't hold up. Can't handle any of the temperature. So you got to make sure you protect yourself. And in those cases, I would be recommending, hey, you need to look at our AMSOIL Signature Series to see if you can get the very best premium synthetic for these lighter weight oils. That way you have some margin to problems, because, boy, you're not a long ways away from the oil film being gone altogether when you're at a 16 or a 0W20. And so you need to protect yourself with the best oil. And that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what you need to do, and it's not always the thing that you want to do. I'm going to tell you what's the right thing to do to protect that vehicle, motorcycle, boat, whatever you got. And there's good products made, and I like to think that we have some of the top-line products in the country coming out of AMSOIL, but I wouldn't tell you they're the only top-line products. There are other products that would be good, and I've had people ask me, well, I'm running such and such an oil, and I'm getting good performance out of it. I've been doing it for years. Should I change? And I laugh a little and say, well, you could change just to support me. I don't have any babies at home that need shoes, but, you could change for me. But no, in all seriousness, if that's working for you, it's a decent oil you're using, and if that way you're changing it, keep on doing what you're doing. So, it's a a variety of applications that come up. There are so many different situations that are slightly different and take a little bit different lubrication. And then I always hit the people that say, well, I'm using what the factory recommends, but I'm using 2 quarts between oil changes and it's getting worse. What should I do, right? Mm-hmm. And I try to give them my best advice. There are some things we look for in oil consumption, and I have a pretty good recommendation on some things for them to do to look for to see where their oil consumption is coming from. So I don't just tell people in answers of what oil should you use. I help people with trying to figure out why they're consuming too much oil. Sometimes I help people with problems that they're having an overheating problem and they can't figure it out. I get into that and try to help them with it. I'm not a mechanic, but I can handle a lot of the auxiliary systems of coolant systems, oil lubricating systems, transmission fluids, rear end gears and oil, chassis grease, the right kind of antifreeze that you're supposed to use and why. So there's a variety of things I can answer. And so I enjoy having people send those questions in on my website or directly by email, and I'd be happy if they'd call you when we're on the air. But in the event you hear it and you're not in a position to call, jot down that website, thelubepage.com. That's TheLubepage.com. And then when you get to a place, all you got to do is log onto the website and go to the thing that Ask Dan a question and fill it in, and you'll get an answer. It's that easy.
Absolutely. Say hello to everybody listening in Atlanta on WCFO, and also everybody listening in Portland, Oregon on KPAM. All you guys can do, as Dan suggests, just go to thelubepage.com and look for the Ask Dan section, and I guarantee you he's going to get back with you just as soon as he can. And
well, that's a couple of good places to get questions from. Kind of a wide spread, but Atlanta and Portland, we have one of our AMSOIL distribution centers in Portland, and a beautiful city. I've been there a few times to give training and some other AMSOIL dealers and groups, and beautiful place.
Absolutely. We'll take time out for some important messages. When we come back on the other side, more about the right oil that you're using in your vehicle or not using in your vehicle. Find out which oil is the best oil from our lubrication specialist, Dan Watson. We'll take a pit stop and be right back.
Hi, Jay Leno, you're listening to Auto World with Bob Long.
Watch out, man, how you drive that Cadillac there.
Ford has brought back the bullet function of the Mustang.
Ain't that a fine machine?
Ford 2019 first bullet edition Mustang, painted in that famous green color, was auctioned off today at Barrett-Jackson, and it's all for charity, so it's a win-win for everybody. The person who is purchasing the vehicle will get a nice big tax deduction, and the charity that it goes to is rewarded. And then, of course, the person who bought the vehicle is going to get rewarded. But it went for a lot of money, $300,000. I would imagine when this vehicle does hit showrooms, it will be somewhere around $45,000. But $300,000 is the winning bid at Barrett-Jackson in Arizona. And I believe they're also auctioning off the first ZR1 of this C7 generation. Dan Watson is with us. He is the go-to guy when it comes to oils, when it comes to lubrication, when it comes to any type of question that can help save you money, give you performance, perhaps help an older engine to act a little younger. And I got a question here. It's interesting that you brought up Toyota. I got a question from Ralph in New Hampshire listening on WCCM. And he has, just as you said a little bit earlier, a 2017 Camry Camry, and he wants to know what's going to happen in the cold parts of New Hampshire once that oil faces that challenge. It's an interesting question, Dan. Dan, are you with us? Looks like we may have lost Dan.
I am here. I hear you.
Okay. Just a button must have been out of place.
All right. We're back into. I could hear you the whole time.
Okay.
Here's the thing. A 2017 Toyota Camry is a 0W20 oil application from the factory. Now, that 0W is really good for extreme cold weather. The 20-weight side is what we call the operational viscosity measured at 212 degrees. So that 0W in the beginning, 0W20, if you've got that in the car, and quite frankly, Toyota requires synthetic engine oil, so I hope that you're keeping with that because that's their requirement from the factory is synthetic engine oil. And if you have a good synthetic 0W20, unless it gets down below 20 below zero, you're going to be just fine. It's going to crank up, and it's going to move fairly easy, and you're in good shape. Now, when I say a good grade synthetic, I would suggest to you that the best type of synthetic base stock for extremely cold weather is, in fact, what they call a PAO base stock, and that's what AMSOIL uses in their Signature Series oil, and it would give you the best absolute frigid cold weather performance for that 0W20. I would tell you that for 0W20 and for all the listeners out there that have even other cars, if you have a specification for 0W20, even if the manufacturer is not like Toyota where they stipulate that you should use a synthetic, I'm going to tell you just flat out, with 0W20 oil, you buy somebody's synthetic somewhere, or you may be guilty of automobile abuse. It's kind of like child abuse. It's automobile abuse that you're maltreating your car because 0W in conventional motor oil, 0W20, is almost impossible to achieve without using so much in what they call viscosity improvers that there's hardly room left for anything else. So stay away from conventional oils. Even in 5W20, I wouldn't use a conventional oil. Look for a good synthetic in those oil categories. Now, if you want the number one performing 0W20 synthetic engine oil, I highly recommend that you use AMSOIL Signature Series oils. You know, we talk about how much oil costs, and this is something that people have to think about for just a minute. If I sell you a premium synthetic AMSOIL Signature Series, and AMSOIL warrants that oil for 1 year or 25,000 miles. Now, let's say that you're an average driver who does 15,000 miles. That's the average across the country, about 15,000 miles a year. If you were doing conventional oil changes, you could be changing your oil anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 miles. So we'll give you the fact that maybe you had one you were running 5,000 miles. So you would do 3 oil changes with conventional oil and 1 oil change with AMSOIL. Now, the retail price of a quart of AMSOIL, retail price now, runs somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 a quart. The retail price for a reasonable, decent conventional or petroleum oil is going to run somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 to $4 a quart today. You can find Valvoline and Quaker State and these guys in the parts store for about $4 a quart. So if you did 3 oil changes with petroleum, that'd be equal to $12 a quart. You did 1 oil change with AMSOIL, that's $11 a quart. So you're already saving money with the AMSOIL going 15,000 miles. And we didn't mention here that you'd have to use 3 oil filters. Now, we're just talking about the cost of the product. But what about if you go into a Quick Lube or somewhere and have an oil change made, and they tell you that they're charging you let's just say give or take, but about $30, $29 and something like that for a conventional oil change. And they tell you they want you back in 3,000 miles. So you get this $29 oil change, but you got to do 5 of those in 15,000 miles. So 5 times 29, okay, it's going to be about $145, okay? And if you turn around and you have them do an AMSOIL Signature Series, they'll do it for about $99, sometimes $109, somewhere in there. So right now, in that situation, you've saved $40, $50 on the oil changes, but what about the fact that you didn't have to stop what you were doing and go for an oil change 5 times? You only had to go once. The convenience is unbelievable. So what I say to people is that you really need to pay attention. Now, listen, Mobil was so smart about this. They've come out with what they call an annual change oil, right? Because actually, Mobil's very aware of AMSOIL, and they've watched AMSOIL champion these extended drains for 25,000 miles and change oil once a year or 25,000 miles. And our market just continued to grow and grow, and our results of this is there's no problem with this. Nobody has cars having trouble, nothing else. This is a proven thing. So Mobil's come around and decided, hey, we should get in on this. It's actually a good idea. We should market this. And it's marketing very well for them. They have a 1-year, 20,000-mile oil. Now, let me tell you something. That annual oil change oil they sells for more than $11 a quart.
Wow.
Yeah, so here's the point. When you start making one of these high-quality oils, it will cost real money. You cannot buy cheaply when you buy quality. You have to buy quality and expect to pay for it. What I always say is, if I buy something that's high quality and it costs me a certain amount of money, as long as I feel like that I got my money's worth, that was high quality, I paid for it, I paid for a premium product, I paid more for it, but it turned out to be a real premium product, I don't expect any change back from whoever sold it to me. It's like if you go and you say, well, I'm going to buy this, you pick it, Bob, you're really good with cars, but I'm going to buy this BMW, or I'm going to buy this Mercedes, or I'm going to buy this Jaguar. I'm going to pay a lot of money for them.
Yep.
The question is, do I feel like I got what I paid for? And if I do, it was a good purchase.
We'll take a time out. When we come back on the other side, more with Dan Watson, thelubepage.com, 855-660-4261.
My pappy said, son, you're going to drive me to drinking if you don't stop driving that hot rod Lincoln.
Giving your radio a broadcasted tune-up. This is Auto World and your host, Bob Long.
Have you heard the story of the
More
hot
than
rod race
25
when Ford
years
and Lincolns were set in the face? That story is true. I'm
Dan
here to
Watson
say
is with
I
us,
was driving that model.
CEO of thelubepage.com, and we're answering your emails, and we've got some telephone lines open if you have any questions about oils, synthetic oils, oils for specific things. It doesn't have to be a car. It could be a boat, or it could be a plane. It could be an ATV. It could be a whole gamut of things, a motorcycle, a moped. We can help you out at our usual number, 855-660-4261. And every now and then, Dan, I like to remind folks that AMSOIL is a family-owned company, which in 2018, pretty rare.
The founder of the company, Albert Amatuzio, died last year. He was 91 or 92, and now his son, Alan, is the chief executive officer running the company, and it continues on with its growth and expansion, and just continues to make great products. And what you find out is people over the years, there's just so many people that will give AMSOIL a chance, start using the products, and they won't use anything else. I mean, I had some lube places, a couple lube places, and they decided that there was some other cheaper synthetic oil that they thought that they ought to put there, and that's their choice. I can't. They're going to use what they think they use, and I just asked that if they had people that requested AMSOIL, that I'd still be willing to try to provide that for them in whatever quantity they needed for these people that request AMSOIL. And my business has actually increased in those tire stores because people just keep asking for AMSOIL. And these guys, it amazes them of how the AMSOIL customers won't use anything else. They cannot substitute them over to something else. They want AMSOIL. If you can't provide it, they go somewhere else. And that's because if you use these products over the years, what you find out is what we were talking about before. AMSOIL always underrates their products. They advertise and tell you how well the product will do, and they underestimate the quality of these products. In other words, they do not want to overstate what they'll do. They understate it, and when it outperforms for you, you go, gosh, this is a fantastic product. Yeah, because they always have a safety margin in there. They're not going to push the products to their extreme. I've done oil analysis and testing, and I've seen oil products from AMSOIL that were at 35,000 miles, and they still weren't, by the testing, at a point they needed to be changed. But we're reasonable. We changed them. And those are the products that they were recommended for 25,000. So AMSOIL never recommends its products for the maximum that their testing shows that it will do, because they want you to have a margin of error in case you have some unusual severe demands on the oil that could shorten its life. They want to make sure they've taken that into consideration, and they're always cautious about extending drains or over-recommending what the products will do. And that makes it, for me as a guy that's a lubrication specialist, it's a fun thing to sell AMSOIL products, because you get to sell a product to somebody that does better than they thought it would, and you can show them that it will actually save them money, superior products. So the products sell themselves. I just introduce them to people and let them know what they do and let them take a shot at it, and then I've usually got a customer for life. It's just that simple. You know,
right.
Hey, listen, you were talking about those Mustangs, and I know we're talking about oil, but my goodness, you remember years ago when I was a kid, and these Mustangs, 65, 67, 68 Mustangs, had a 289 V8, put a 4-barrel on it, and those were some powerful little cars, because what a lot of folks don't realize is that those were actually small vehicles. A 65 or Mustang in that era was actually built on the Falcon frame.
Yep.
And so they were not heavy. So you throw in this really powerful V8 with a 4-speed transmission in a pretty lightweight car, and those things were really a performing vehicle with that 289 V8.
One of the great engines of Ford's history. There's no question about it, Dan. And I have a feeling that it's the 50th anniversary of the movie, and I think there's going to be a lot of hoopla about the all-new Bullitt Mustang, which will be made in limited numbers for collectors. But I bet you a lot of younger people will be introduced to the movie for the first time.
Oh, yeah, great movie, too. Now, listen, here's one thing I want to mention about this. These are what we refer to, and we call them the muscle cars, right, from that era. These cars had powerful V8 engines, some of them big blocks, getting up to 427s and, 421s and 428s and 454s and 440 Magnums and just all this stuff. Well, the listeners out there need to understand the oil that was used in those cars had a higher concentration of zinc and phosphorus than is used in modern API SN-rated engine oil. So most know this, but if you got a classic car and you haven't heard this, let me please explain to you. You need to use oil that is designed to protect, in many cases, what they call flat tappet cam systems. It's not the same that we have now, okay? And the point is, if you use the wrong lubrication in those cam systems, you can wear them out in a hurry. I mean, you can wear them out in a hurry. So the other part is that if you have these classic cars and you don't drive them a lot, most people drive these really fine classic cars, in many cases less than 500 miles a year. You actually have to be concerned with rust and oxidation inside the engine. You have to be careful about that. And so here's the thing. Buy a specialty oil that's made for these cars. In the Amsoil line, there is a Z-Rod, it's called. It's just the name of the oil, but it's for the classic cars and muscle cars, designed for the specification of the additives that was required when those cars were built, and in the viscosity thicknesses of 30, 40, and 50 weight. So if you've got something in that and you're not really sure about it, all you got to do is go to the lube page and say, Dan, I picked up this beautiful Z28 Camaro from 1972. It's got a Chevy 327 engine in it, and I'm not really sure if there's special lube that I should use. And I'll get you all the information you need. Or, hey, I got this, what I think is a really classic car. I got this Plymouth Roadrunner
yeah.
with a 426 Hemi in it.
Ooh.
What do I run in that, right? And my first thing is that you drive that over to my house and let me drive it, and then I'll tell you everything you need to know. Okay? I love those cars. The Plymouth Barracuda, the Plymouth Roadrunner.
Yeah.
Only made for not a real long period of time, but boy, those are some classic lines in those cars.
No question.
The real thing here, Bob, is you're a car lover. I'm a car lover. There's people out there with all these cars. Hey, treat your car to the best lubrication because you've already got a cherished classic. Make sure that you keep it in the tip-top shape inside the engine and out. I know everybody cleans them up and puts chrome on the valve covers, and they really look great when you open the hood. But don't forget, there's an inside to that engine also. And you can lubricate it wrong with these modern oils because they won't let them, the EPA will not let them put enough additives in to protect your flat tappet cam systems in many of those vehicles. And today, where you see them going to thinner and thinner oils, a lot of those vehicles require 40-weight engine oil. So anyway, you don't have to become an expert on that stuff. Just go to the lube page and ask the questions, and you'll get the resource there and the answers you need, and I can hook you up with the right oil. And these classic car synthetic oils made by Amsoil, they are like feeding your car caviar. They are the perfect thing for those classic cars. I just can't overemphasize that. And no matter what you own, don't guess, ask, and get the right lubes, and make sure you put the right lubrication in because it is so easy out there with cheap imitations, cheap products that you put in your car, and they just shorten the life. You're not going to drive down the road and the car stops. But goodness gracious, you want to get 300,000 miles, not 150,000 miles out of it.
Very good, Dan. As usual, you're just a plethora of information. Thanks for your time.
Been a pleasure, Bob. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. That will do it for this hour of Auto World. When you get a chance, check out my website as well, autoworldradio.com.
Folks, this is Bob Long, host of Auto World Radio, with great news. We have a new sponsor, Dan Watson, who distributes Amsoil throughout the USA and Canada. Dan is one of Amsoil's largest distributors. He's a former U.S. Navy nuclear specialist and a certified lubrication specialist with 25-plus years of experience. You can listen to Dan every Sunday evening live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on GCNlive.com. Get all of your questions answered and ensure you get the best lubrication for your car, truck, boat, or really anything that moves. In 1972, Amsoil pioneered synthetic lubrication, and Amsoil continues to provide the best lubrication money can buy. Get the best advice for the best results. Contact Dan at thelubepage.com. That's thelubepage.com. Or call 800-370-2986. That's 800-370-2986.